My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jimmy, Kayfabe Weekly 68, man. What motherfucking day is it?
June 25, 2020.
How can we get you guys to miss us if we never go away? As the great Jim Cornette says.
Very, very true.
Busy couple of weeks, man.
Indeed it has been, Ed. We're gonna kind of hit that, but we've been double recording interviews for whatever reason these last couple of weeks. Circumstances have presented us with a plethora of rich guests.
Yeah, man. When we do these things, put them out there. One of the most gratifying pieces is when people we really, really like hit us up.
Yes, very much so. I'm almost always shocked.
Started with Todd McFarlane saying, "Hey guys, I'll interview with you. I'll interview with you if you want." Fuck yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
No brainer there. Yeah, indeed. So, double booked for the last several weeks, double booked for the next several weeks. So these weeklies are going to probably be a little bit spotty, hit and miss. Obviously, follow us everywhere you follow us to kind of keep up with what we're doing. There's always the e-newsletter, social media, things like that. And we'll try to keep everybody up to date as much as possible. But there is a lot going on. You keep working. We try to do this mostly one day a week. We are working cartoonists. And we've certainly been keeping busy during the quarantine. So
crazy projects, man. Let's try to keep the format a little touch. I know that the Kayfabers clicked on a thumbnail that was by Mark Pinter. Sent it in to us, man. And we've been soliciting thumbnail art for our weeklies and our mailbag episodes for the past little while. Jimmy, what are the dimensions?
Dimensions are 1280 pixels by 720 pixels. Please do some for the mailbags. We have more for the weeklies than we do the mailbags. That is something we've been trying to keep up with because your house will be overrun with comics, Ed, if we don't. But again, 1280 by 720 pixels. Send it to our Gmail account, cartoonist.kayfabe@gmail.com. Include, an Instagram where we can link so that people can find more of your art if you do send us a thumbnail. And send that as a JPEG.
Right, yeah, JPEG. Very important. And once again, shouts to Mark Pinter. Amazing thumbnail this week.
Yeah, I love it. And a lot of them have been good. So if you haven't seen your thumbnail yet, be patient.
Jim Rugg, man, completed a very successful Kickstarter project.
Yes, it is a full-time job running a Kickstarter, Ed, let me tell you. But thank you to everybody who supported it, everybody who backed it, shared it, kind of patted me on the back along the way. I appreciate all of the support on it. And now the Kickstarter portion is done. So I am happy to announce it ended 1 week ago today. It exceeded whatever my goals were. Wasn't sure what to expect on my first Kickstarter. But I spent this week sending all of the files to 5 different printers. And I am thrilled to say all the files are now in printers' hands. Some of the prints have already come back. I posted a video this past weekend looking at some sample prints for the black and white edition, which everyone who watches this show knows I have a soft spot for 80s independent black and white comics. Due to popular demand, I am making a version of this comic in that black and white 80s independent style. I don't want to give away too much, but the video is showing the very first prototypes of making those black and white comics. And let me tell you, the end result is going to be better than anything I show on that video, even though that video was very fun to make.
Jim, you have me skittish now because I know what you're talking about, and you didn't forewarn me not to say a thing. So I'm glad you said that, but now I'm nervous to proceed with certain lines of questioning, and I guess that's what editing is for.
Ask anything, man. It's no secrets at this point.
So 5 different printers, I guess some individual prints, and the various versions of the book. Like, how does that break down?
Yeah, so I am doing, the initial thing was to do a black light comic book. This is printed with fluorescent ink. We're working with a printer Marquee, offset printed, and that is going out. That'll be the main book. That's the reason for the Kickstarter. When people ask what level, what reward to back, that's the one to back the world's first blacklight comic book. That's the whole reason for this Kickstarter. So super psyched for that. But in the process of making a Kickstarter, you always do a digital comic. It's kind of expected. When I was researching how do you do a comic book Kickstarter, you got to have the PDF option. I didn't know what to do because the blacklight inks, they're fluorescent inks.
Right.
It's some inks and some printed matter that doesn't really reproduce on screen. And so part of making the digital versions, I ended up making 3 digital versions. I made a neon version with some crazy trippy colors that are only appear on the screen. I made a black and white version because that's my soft spot. And I made a retro piece because the book is set in 1976. So kind of like Aphrodisiac, show that retro palette with the busted up newsprint and the faded yellow pages and stuff. And I was so happy with how all of those digital versions turned out. I started showing them off. People wanted print versions. I wanted print versions. So added that as a reward, and people supported it in a big way. And you are going to be rewarded for that support because, well, I went all in on them. So one of my posts was ordered 160 pounds plus of one of them. It's funny whenever you're shipping stuff, you see the weights.
Yeah.
And just finished up the proofs this morning on another version that these things are going to be great. I can't wait to show them off. And as they come in, I will make little videos and show off some of the prints. Speaking of prints, I'm doing 3 blacklight screen prints with a printer out of Rhode Island. I think it's Rhode Island. And sent those in. They should be amazing. They're blacklight prints. They're what you would see in head shops. When I think of the 70s or Charles Burns' Black Hole, this is what you would see on the walls.
Big ass prints.
Big prints, fluorescent inks, should be amazing. And I had done, I've experimented with this in the past, so I kind of know what to expect. They should be amazing. I'm so psyched. All this stuff, I am making it now. And that's my favorite part of the process, as you can probably tell. I feel like I'm channeling Rob Liefeld with this energy, but I'm so excited to be making this stuff. So the screen prints, orders sent, those should be coming in the next couple of weeks. And a book plate was one of the pieces, just a separate print was one of the pieces that was a stretch goal that was unlocked. And so I have gotten those. I've signed about 2,000 of those this week so far.
Yeah, man.
Still have a couple boxes of those to go in terms of signing, but it's underway. I'm starting to get, things are starting to come in. And so for the next, the next several weeks, I should have stuff coming in almost every week from some of these different places. And I cannot wait to see it myself. I cannot wait to show it off. And I can't wait to send it to everybody that backed this because I'm making some stuff I've never made before, Ed. And that is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And this is where you excel. This is like, just look through your bibliography and see all the wacky, weird shit that you've made in your day, and this is just like, this is the crown jewel.
It's a dream.
Until your next one.
Exactly. Like, I look at this as this model of like, wow, whatever I can come up with, I might be able to make it now. Like, this is a way to like fund this stuff and make this stuff on a bigger scale, because I've made so many zines that I enjoyed and enjoyed making, but those are a small scale. It's me paying out of pocket ahead of time, not knowing if I'll sell any, or maybe hand assembling them, whatever the case is. A lot of those zines, some of them are in runs of 40, so what this does, this experience, is it's kind of like, if I have some crazy concept that I wake up with tomorrow after a great dream,
right?
Well, maybe there's a way to make that. And, this is kind of the test run in a lot of ways. I always say whatever you're working on is sort of the practice for the next piece.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be amazing. I've never been more excited to see a product or a project come back from the printers and actually be real than this one. But you're right. There'll be a next one.
Yeah, so, of course. It has to be. And I imagine that even at this point right now, you must have learned a lot about like what to do, how to change things just for efficiency's sake.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably wouldn't do screen prints and comic books on the same Kickstarter again, because it's 2 separate pieces of shipping. And
here's the move, because I've been talking to people over the sheltering in place, man. So I got to get some socialization in. Got to talk to the homies, and you account for that. When you are putting something together, essentially meaning your silkscreen print is this big.
Right. It is true. Like I always say, whenever you start a book, and this is with students, this is a little bit of a different thought for them, but you get a contract, you figure out the size of your book before you're even drawing it usually.
Yeah.
Certainly dimensions, probably page count factors in very early on, and now dealing with Kickstarter, it's kind of like even shipping size, weight, all of these things now enter that thought process in the beginning. Like for this book, I made the book first and then decided to Kickstarter it.
Yeah.
So, it's one more tool. It feels like, if you're a woodworker or something and you get that new router or something, I feel like this is a new tool that's really come into my workshop now.
I have some intel as well on just how like those distribution companies work, and there are regional ones like you ask the big ones, and usually they deal with 10,000 pieces or more, but it seems like from the people that I've talked to, those big fish would be happy to. They know who the small fish are in your region, and if they're close enough, we might have some trouble just because we're not a metro, but like our friends in California and shit, like they can drive to that center when they have to sign 1,000 things.
Yeah.
So when you get the printer to ship it there, then you go visit there for the day, sign your shit,
right,
and then off and popping. There might be something like that here. Like
there could be.
We have a lot of weird stuff that, like, if you don't know where to look, you don't even know that they're making chess sets down the street.
For sure. Yeah. I've done that. You drive through the neighborhood with the guy that lives there and you're like, oh, that's that company. And it just looks like a warehouse. You're like, what?
Do you remember, like, shouts to Dan Greenwald. He had a show called Comic Book Pit, I think. And we went to that video studio, right? Like, you did it first, and then I went there. Cartoonist time, like, early to the gig always, man. Like, you got to be on time. So I didn't know where I was going. Got there significantly early enough to walk around the town, and I walk around the corner, and there is a human torso holding a door open with body hair and all kinds of shit, and I'm like, what the fuck? Bloody stumps and stuff. And I'm like, what? And I like went over there, and there's a special effects house in it's not Brentwood, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's not Brentwood.
Breezewood, or one of those B towns that are adjacent. A special effects house here in town. Never knew it even existed.
Yeah, there's a film industry presence in Pittsburgh, and sometimes you'll see it in those like warehouses converted into workspaces. I walked into one time, with a different artist, and it was animatronic eyes. Like the guy next to him, his space, and they were amazing, man. Like, they would follow you around. It'd just be like a latex eyelid mounted, on a wall or something, and you're looking at it, and it's like the most realistic eye you've ever seen inside of it, and it can move around and stuff, and it's like, what do you do? This is your job? You make eyes? Very strange.
Yeah, super wild, man.
I should say, too, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, what's he excited about with this book? How do I get it? It's still available. Now it's moved on from Kickstarter to pre-orders, and you can get that link through the Kickstarter page. It's Octobrion in 1976. It's also coming through Diamond to comic shops, so you can also go to your local comic shop and request Octobrion in 1976 from At House Books. Start pre-ordering that thing. It is going to be available as widely as I can make it available.
This is going to be the new model, I think. Like, get your page rate by way of Kickstarter, or however that's going to shake out, and then those aren't the only people that want the thing. In fact, like the day after your Kickstarter lapsed, you posted something, just like a random piece. So many people in the comments like, I let it lapse. It's like, damn, it was going on for 40 days.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
Like I said, my goal is always just to get these comics. I want to reach as wide of audience as possible. If this sounds good to you, I want to meet you in the middle there with the comic. So, this is still the beginning. Like I hope to sell this thing for a long time. While supplies last.
Yeah, it's hard to go back to reprints unless that reprint is a significant number.
This one's going to be tough to reprint. I don't know that this would be something, just because of the nature of producing it, there are some technical challenges involved. So yeah. I don't know that this one's going to be reprinted anytime soon.
Yeah.
But we are trying to overprint some.
You got to. I mean, that's standard operating procedure. I've been to Ad House, man. There's some room to stuff some Octobrianas. How big is that going to be?
It's comic book size.
Oh.
It'll fit perfectly. All you comic book fans out there, it'll fit perfectly on your spinner racks, in your long boxes, however you like to display those comics, it will fit. And all of you comic book retailers, it'll fit perfectly on the comic book rack next to the new releases. Super
sick, man. Super proud of you. A lot of shit going down, man. These past couple months while we're all sheltering in place, I just saw that Tom got his comp copies of Kirby.
Yes.
And he posted photos on his social medias and everything. Super dope. But I was like, dude, the one photo you missed, the one photo you didn't take to show off, what's the girth on that sumbitch,
Yeah,
man? And I made him send me a photo. He said that it's perfect in every way. The paper choice is dope.
That's great.
All the case wrap is what he wanted. All of that stuff. He might, like, depending on how I'm feeling and how, like, our schedules align, he might stop over, because I'm getting to the, like, he's been sheltering in place. I trust him because he's as paranoid as you or I about like getting germed out. You know, we've gotten con crud enough times to know what to do. So might have him come over, man, and shoot the shit, show that thing off a little bit, and just rap about it. I miss the dude.
Yeah, man, that'd be great. I think everybody would be happy to see him. We've accumulated a box. A lot of Kayfabers send us their comics, and many of them include a third issue for Tom. So we do have those put aside for him, including that awesome pen nib from a few weeks back.
Yeah, man, it's been all of 2020 since I seen the guy, pretty much, man. And don't worry, Tom, I checked the box and clean it of spiders or any other kind of shit that might be crawling around in there, man. But
Ed, what have you been doing?
Since we've been sheltering, man, I just did the count yesterday, and it's like a little over 70 pages.
Unbelievable.
Since we've been on lockdown, just been constantly grinding. I can't like focus too much on the news or whatever, man, because it fucking, my stomach eats itself, and it makes me feel nuts. So I mean, comics is one of those, like, a lot of us get into the medium for escape, and I am itching for escape, man. You're the only person I've seen for most of 2020. I've talked to people on the phone here and there, and shit is going nuts. So it's like, focus. Just like, that is my zen space. I could just hang out and fucking make shit happen. That's exactly what I've been doing. In effect, it's like 2.5 issues of Red Room, and that extra half is really would be like a third issue. It's just, after talking with Uncle Todd, I really got into this mindset of like wanting to make single issues that are totally satisfying and as complete as possible. So I decided to gang up issue 1 and 2. So I got 3 done. Started showing them off to other pros and shit to see, you know, like what their thoughts are on the matter. And in the meantime, I'm just serializing the stuff on the Patreon. You know, I set it up so that every Tuesday a bunch of new strips come out. The first issue is getting near complete, and $3 gets you the archive. I don't know how Patreon works exactly, so I don't know, like, you know, we're recording this on June 25th. I don't know if it charges you right then, and then at the turn of the month it'll charge you again, so maybe wait a couple of days. And that's what happened at the beginning of June, where I had a number of subscribers that I was totally happy with whenever I launched it in the middle of the month, and then at that turn, it seems like, I don't know if you can like watch a Patreon or like be alerted, but it was like at the flip of the month, I wake up and I'm like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? I don't want to be Pavlovian about it and expect that, you know, on July 1st.
Like Christmas Day every beginning of the month.
Yeah. Like, I think it was, you know, you're building up and your core group is jumping on board. But it's for the early adopters. I don't know how many other formats it's going to take in terms of its shape, but it will see the light of day in other ways. I'm very transparent about that on the Patreon, and it might even see like a free digital release on like a webtoon type platform or something at a later date. This is strictly for the early adopters, the people that want to support the project and see it before anybody else. And I saw some hardcore Kayfabers, man, making their own bootleg zines.
Saw some of those, man. And that's near and dear to my heart.
And we made bootleg videos, man. So it's like, you got me, you know.
It's really cool.
I loved it. I on one hand, like, yo, Eli, man, can I get one?
Send that to the mailbag, Eli. It is awesome, Ed. And, you know, you talk about a new model with Kickstarter. I see the same thing with Patreon. Like, this is the model. Make the comics that you care about. Figure out how to connect those to the readers. And it's one more way to do it. And, you know, you talk about early adopters. It's a great description for it because everybody finds good work is timeless. You know, we're still reading Batman Year One 30 years later.
Right.
35 years later. So, you know, these different models are sort of, you engage with the ones that fit what you're making. And sometimes it's several of those models, you know, whether it's and also experiment, right? Like how much fun is like this is being a kid and making stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what does it look like on a phone, you know, on a Webtoons or something. Maybe you do edit stuff between, you know, the very first iteration on Patreon, like a Dan Clausen from 8-Ball to the Collections, you know. So I dig it, man. I think it's cool, and I think it's cool that it's a platform where we can see the pages every week. We know you're ahead. It's great. It's really like a syndicated comic strip or something in that way. But then there's extras. You get to see the sketches or behind the scenes or the notes or whatever you put up there.
There's 100.
It's kind of a cool way to interact, I think, with an artist you like or a new story. It's pretty great.
It's a cool little thing, and clearly it's like the kayfabe community like is funneling over, and you're getting a chance to see some stuff that I don't know that I'll let see the light of day. The comics, of course, but I drew a 100-page story in a very quick, rough and dirty way to get to the place of where the finished pages are. So share that story. It's a completely different story.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But it's all there. It's kind of rough. Speaking of Webtoons, speaking of online, like all that stuff, 2 recommendations, man. Ron Wimberly has a Webtoon.
Yeah.
I forget the title.
Gratin',
man. It's like Ninjas in the Bronx or something.
Gratuitous Ninjas.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's super. The artwork is sublime. And also, you got to go to Simon Hanselman's Instagram.
Yeah.
He's serializing every day 10 new squares of his characters, and it is it's bananas, you know. Like I look forward to it every day. It makes me like imagine. It makes me think that this would be like what it was like for somebody in like 1940 who was looking forward to the next episode of Dick Tracy or something. And he's clearly like doing it on the fly, and it's going all over the place. And I don't know that he knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but man, the journey is fun.
Really good cartoonist. That's a great recommendation. And Gratuitous Ninja is on Webtoons, I believe.
Webtoons, yeah.
And that's interesting because like we've known Ron for a while and we've seen him do some of this stuff where that's designed for your phone screen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like if you're looking at new ways of reading comics and sort of new formats of how comics are being made and shared, that's a great one to check out because it's built for that format. It looks great on a screen in color. His work's beautiful to look at anyway, but it's built for that phone. So if you're curious about Webtoons and trying kind of a different delivery model and reading experience, that's a great place to start.
It's clear that cartoonists are built to shelter in place, and there's a lot of good stuff that is being made while we have no opportunity to do much else.
You know, you mentioned kind of putting your head down and really working as a way to maybe avoid the news or whatever. I've been so grateful for that. Like Octobriana, there is some obsessive shit in that book and in some of these editions because of that. It was almost like take the governor off the OCD because I would much rather stare at my drawing table at these comics, at these dot patterns than anything else.
Right.
I'm almost thankful for that. So yeah, now's the time to make.
Absolutely, man. Now, can we get into a couple of the interviews?
Let us do that.
Let's name some names, dude.
This is since the last time we've been here on screen for a weekly, Ed. Kevin Eastman, Rob Liefeld, David Cho, Gary Groth, Hoche Anderson, Coop, Robert Kirkman.
And we just did 2 shoots today.
It has been amazing. You know, the other piece of sort of coping with, you know, the apocalypse out the window is getting to talk to these guys and really getting to hear comic stories, man. You know, I've talked a lot about my love of wrestling podcasts and listening to the road stories. That's what we're getting. You know,
Yeah.
We're getting these people to talk about their experiences. We've read the books, you know, we know their work. Let's hear about how that stuff came to be. And it's been really enjoyable.
Super instructive.
That too.
You know, a lot of good intel. We mentioned Gary Groth, right?
Yes.
Our fair publisher over there at Fantagraphics, man, came through on the other side of COVID and is doing super well. David Cho hit us up, and I thought it was trolling at first, man. And I'm like, are you sure? And through his Instagram, hit the DMs up, and I'm like, holy fuck, that's super cool. Like we did the Slow Jams episode. Yeah, we can't even remember the episodes that must have gone up these past couple of weeks or whatever, man.
I always can't remember because there's always like the queue of what we haven't posted, but we've edited and we've shot, and I know it. It's a weird time travel loop.
And it like these guests run the gamut, right? And there are some similarities, but then there's like everybody has a little piece that I think would be valuable for myself personally to like incorporate into the practice. And now we're like compounding that by talking with more and more people. It's the intel that comes from this. You sit down, you dissect, you listen. We're gonna create some cartoonist assassins, man.
I think so too. It's one part's history, one part how to, and man, what a wealth of experiences everybody brings to this table. I
think we'll see direct results of it in the Kayfabe mailbags in about 6 months.
That's amazing.
You know what I'm saying, man? Like you gotta digest the info. You gotta digest it before you can put it into practice, man.
Yeah, certainly comics take time to turn this around, and we've heard some very knowledgeable people weigh in on that, and sort of the practice of making comics and that turnaround.
Super fun to like slide some guys out to people that they just like weren't expecting from us. Most people are on brand, right? You expect that there was going to be a Liefeld episode at some point, man. You expect that Uncle Gary will be on the channel, but then when you slide out like a Coop or a David Cho, that's coming from left field because it's not like specifically comic centric, but it does, it involves pen and ink and
storytellers, man,
superhero imagery or whatever.
Some of the Coop stuff was incredible. Like hearing him talk about screen printing, which certainly not far from the self-publishing small press roots that we come from. Talking about pulling his own prints early on, printing on the giant 22 by, I want to do 22 by 35 inch prints real bad after talking to him. Hearing him describe making his own blue line pages to paint on top of for illustration. I've never heard anyone talk about that. And like the blue line method, we all know from comics history, but I always assumed you would get those blue line, like
send it
magic,
off.
Somehow those just come back to you. He's talking about making those himself with the chemical that you expose to the sunlight, kind of like a screen print. Wow.
There's all this little shit, because like Kevin Eastman the week before like mentioned something about that, and we just let that ride. But then when Coop brings it up the next week, it's like you just introduce us to another piece of archaic bullshit, as Coop calls it, our kink. That like just had no idea. But then when you think about shit, it's like, yeah, Dark Horse and like Image had their own blue line paper, like really fast. You know what I'm saying? Now, at that level, you're probably sending that out to a photo bureau because like, you're going to develop this many fucking pieces of paper. But for instance, at the Kubert School, there would be blue line stuff that you could do color. You could do the Lynn Varley thing over top of like Sergeant Rock pages. And I bet that they did those, one at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's information that I had no idea about.
Regarding Coop, he mentioned CAD, which was like a book that it's like a magazine that Charles Schneider put out that has a bunch of like 50s pinup art and spot illustrations and shit. I ordered one. It's not here yet, but man, that's the benefit of talking with these cats and having the video before we put it live, because you could find CAD fairly cheap, and it's just like, it's like cheesecake, kitschy, Russ Myers-ish.
Sure.
But it also has drawing, like there's art from Klaus and stuff in there that you've just never seen. So there will probably be a show and tell episode highlighting that stuff at a certain point. Kevin Eastman, freaking dope, right? Like there are things like as a cartoonist that your family and your friends, they just accept. But like when you have a book, like you show that to them, everybody understands a book.
Yes.
It becomes real to them. The Kevin Eastman interview like made this YouTube channel like real to like my friends and shit, because they're like, oh, the Ninja Turtles guy,
Right.
like actually gave you guys the fucking time of day. It's like, who you think we are, you know?
I often think of these high points of creator comics history. Obviously, the Turtles, one of the highest. You know,
Right.
Bone, a high one. Robert Kirkman's another one. So, you know, when you think of some of the most successful creator-owned comics in history, Turtles and Walking Dead are those are top fivers, right? I mean, extraordinary. So it's funny to get those guys basically in the same block of interviews and talk about perspective of achieving the dream. You know, really working for something and having it go basically as well as it could possibly go. Pretty great to get those perspectives and to kind of get what they take out of those experiences.
A part of doing these conversations and talking with these people is that it creates more opportunity. And like when we were chatting with Groth, but you know, just setting things up, just floated like, is Ho-Che Anderson accessible? Like, could I get to him? Like when Pop Life comes out and King, like those are dope freaking books, man. Like there was nothing else that looked like those things. Why not? Like why not have these like get the, like if it was at all possible to get that dude on, and Gary's just like, yeah, it's so simple. Like put a little email together, man, and it was on and popping. And then when
Who, by the way, I don't know much about Ho-Che Anderson before we talk to him. I just know his comics.
yeah,
I sort of have an idea of who makes this comic. Who makes, you know, I Want to Be Your Dog.
right.
You know, who makes Pop Life. You know, like these are books that don't look like other comics. And in my mind, I wasn't sure, you know, who we were gonna meet whenever we called him. Amazing story. Like went to film school after he had achieved the success in the comics, you know,
Yeah.
worked as a journalist, which I find fascinating. And that idea of like how comics connect to both of those fields and practices. And it's all storytelling. I really enjoyed talking to him.
We're all related, you know, bound by comics. So like I never fear the conversations that we'll have, because it's always, we know what to say to like bring shit out of people, like when it comes to like straight cold off the street. Every convention you go to, man, you get in an interesting conversation with people, and there's common language, man. Let's see who else Uncle Rob in the house.
It feels like that's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
It was great to sit down and talk to him. It was great to see the energy that he still brings to it. Hearing him talk candidly about selling comics, you know, selling the comics that he makes today and the pressure to sell those comics, I like hearing it. We've talked about it from the beginning of this channel, and to hear somebody who has sold millions of comics speak in basically the same way, it just lets me know, yeah, you got to bang the drum.
There were the common threads. Like Kirkman displayed it as well, talking about marketing schemes and how he was going to promote certain things before books are even out. This is all extra work. You know, Mark Miller brought it up with some of his like weird kayfabe tricks to get people on the internet talking about his stuff. Your average creator ain't doing this necessarily. They're very comfortable, you know, graphomaniacs or whatever, man. Just like put the page in front of them, they'll draw whatever you say onto the next. But you got to, like, if you can just handle that promo piece and actually, you know, put your stuff out, sell it.
Yeah.
Then you get to sort of like rise above a little bit, man.
It was interesting. Again, you know, I look at this list and I think of these parallels and the things that come up from multiple people. And Kevin Eastman and Rob Liefeld, another huge example of you know, the creator ownership success. Like those guys, again, top 5 successful creator owned comics and stuff. They're both at a position where they're so excited to be drawing comics. You know, this has come up with a lot of people, is the more successful you get, the less time you have to draw the comics. It's funny. It's this like double-edged sword, this catch-22. It inspires me to find somebody who's been doing this for 30 years or more and seems as excited to sit down at their drawing table as I am. Yeah. It's very hopeful.
I agree, man. There's all this stuff like we look to our comics elders for, man, and at the beginning it's just like, what kind of brush do you use?
Yeah.
But as you get involved and you're in the game, there are further considerations that are going to come sort of down the line, and just some of the stuff that Lightfoot was talking about just almost like your cartooning shelf life, or you getting compromised and all that. That's a very real concern with all of us, just in general, but certainly with the work. And the two places that I look to, say the hand gets shaky, or something fucked up neurologically happens or something. Tezuka, like towards the end, he was like lamenting that he can't draw a perfect circle anymore, and all of his characters are built on this perfect circle. You see those comics, that would be like Phoenix. It's dope. It's fucking dope. And then of course Charles Schultz, when you start to get that shaky line, it's a good looking line, So like, it's not his ideal, it's not what he wants. And you know what? I could add Frank Frazetta on top of that, because like when we went to visit his gallery, it was after he had like a second or maybe a third stroke and lost the function in whatever hand he naturally paints with. So he had to like tape the brush to the hand and like use the other hand to kind of like move it around. And he did. And the paintings were sick, He was really mad that it took an extra week per painting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But you look at it, it's like, nah, that's fucking dope, man. So like, I try to like think about those guys as like get older, and I don't know about you, man. I need to sleep more every night than I used to. In my 20s, I could punt a whole day and just not sleep and work through this shit. Sleep 6 days a week.
Hoche Anderson and Coop. A couple of parallels I saw between those guys that I find inspiring is how much they keep growing.
Yeah.
Neither one of them seems to like stop at one point and be like, I'm a pen and ink guy,
right?
Or I'm a screen print guy, or I'm a painter. It is just like, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a journalist, I'm a photographer. I'm making Legos now that are being put on display. It is just this almost a fire or something, just a drive. It's a curiosity, it's this desire to just like keep engaging, keep learning, keep expanding. And, in the case of Coop, and probably, I guess, Hoche is this probably a similar age. I guess, he would have been starting in the early 90s too. So about that age, it's guys who start pre-digital and continue to be relevant post-digital, which we know lots of people that fell off, that never made that move. And, it's the same instinct of like, I want to keep adding. I want to know how to do this thing. I love that. I hope I do that my whole life.
Yeah, I agree. I think it staves off dementia or something. You know what I mean? Like, you just keep busy.
Keeps boredom at bay.
That's for sure. And I've been shouting this, man, from the mountaintops, man, since we've been locked down. We got to come out with some fresh skills out of this. Like, it was a mismanagement of our time if we come out of this and you didn't learn something new, or develop a new technique, or even philosophically, gotta educate yourself, gotta do something, man. Like, we were all afforded this time that we could look at as an opportunity. It sucks, but gotta do what you can.
Yeah, you plugged a couple of comics earlier. Let me shout out a podcast. Something You Should Know, 2 episodes ago, did something on practical tips to increase your happiness. And some really interesting studies are put forth on that podcast. Things talking about engineering teams that set out to solve a problem versus set out to create something. And the results of just having that slightly different mindset and the results of that. Man, they had one of their things cited was looking up whenever you're like out walking around rather than looking down at the ground, making a difference. And in my mind, it's like, I might track down that study because I'm curious if it's physiological or if it's psychological. But if it's physiological, cartoonists, we're hunched over, like if it's something that affects breathing and posture and all of this stuff, like it'd be beneficial for me to know that, because then you need to program in some exercise that counteracts that hunched over part. But I found it really interesting, and it's probably a 15-minute segment, and there's a whole litany of things that are very practical of like, do this, hold the door for the stranger, little minor things. But again, hopefully we're coming near the end of the quarantine maybe, and if you want to come out of here with some skills, that ain't a bad one to add to the to your tool set, is maybe a few behaviors that might improve the mood.
Yeah, well said, man. Any other big little pop culture things that have kept you happy and or like in the drawing chair or envelope stuffing chair or whatever chair your Kickstarter ass is involved with?
It's a lot of ground to cover, Ed. I can't think of too much. Mr. Wrestling 2 died, so I was listening to a lot of memorials and tributes about him. Interesting guy, was retired working at a gas station before he was lured out to become Mr. Wrestling 2. His eulogy is one of the greatest masked wrestlers of all time. That didn't start until after his second retirement from wrestling.
Wow.
So, I enjoy those kinds of stories too. It's always sad when someone passes, but it is when you get to hear all the people that know them sort of talk about them, and it can be very insightful.
There was the Undertaker documentary that still has, well, last I checked, there's still a couple episodes that are out that haven't seen the light of day yet. That might be changed because it's been a while since I grabbed them. I'm looking forward to that. Haven't fucked with that. I got the Bruce Lee thing on lock, but I haven't checked that thing out. What I did check out while working was there was a 4.5 hour documentary on 80s horror movies, like VHS era shits. And they would have people like Joe Bob Briggs and John Carpenter was on there. Some of the actors and actresses from these flicks. 4.5 hours long, and the way that it was structured was and I think this was kickstarted, I think that's how this whole thing came together, but it is a constant oscillation between macro and micro. So it'll talk about like specific piece of the genre and then get micro with it with individual movies and like show things up, then it would get macro again for another concept, and then the micro version examples from different movies and stuff, and like that is the era that I cut
really
my puppy
good.
teeth on. Easy to stay in the drawing chair for half your work day while listening to this, man. Sort of never a dull moment, though. I sort of like the music part is like whatever, like show me special effect or whatever. Let me see Tom Savini do some crazy shit. Really cool. It's called In Search of Darkness. Highly recommended.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
And then it put me on the trail to get was it called Be Kind Rewind?
Yes.
That documentary about VHS specifically. I think that might have been kickstarted as well.
There was Be Kind Rewind, and I think Adjust Your Tracking.
Adjust Your Tracking is what I'm thinking.
I saw one of those when it was traveling.
We saw it.
It was great.
It was at the Millville. The Millwood.
The
Pittsburgh filmmakers, yeah.
And it was so cool because like the filmmakers basically set up the lobby like a video store.
Yeah.
And talk about nostalgic,
Dude.
like neurons firing in my brain. That was so much fun, but I do dig that. That's a good one. I just watched Last Action Heroes, which is about a 3-hour history of action movies. I think it picks up in the late 60s, and it kind of goes through like the big 80s, 90s, what would have been my heyday for watching that stuff.
I'm gonna fuck with that, man. The thing about the Adjust Your Tracking or Be Kind Rewind, like the credits go up, and that's why I was like, okay, I think that's Kickstarter, because there's just like a lot of names with no credit, and I didn't see the part above that. But Mark J. Palm, Kayfabe Lieutenant, who works in the warehouse at Fantagraphics, one of the backers or contributors to that thing, which is so cool, super awesome, and then it made perfect sense because when I go out there, he set up talks and screenings for me to do at Scarecrow Video, which is like one of like the last video stores, and it's a fucking amazing shop. Also, after watching these documentaries, I was looking on eBay at lots of VHS tapes, and then I'm like, you know what, I just can't do it. There's just no room.
Yeah, that's tough. The other video store for people who have a chance, again, I don't know who's traveling or anything, but Austin has that I Love Video store. Mm-hmm. I did a signing in Austin a few years ago, and so I went to that video store, and it's like the size of a city block and 2 stories, and I mean every movie. It's incredible. So I don't know how many of those things are left, but
did you ever shop at Incredibly Strange when it was there?
I might have a membership card still in my wallet.
That's possibly. So dope, man. On the spot, name a flick or two that you grabbed from there.
That is where I first saw Project Grizzly.
Oh, okay, Kayfabers. The very first time I hung out with Jim, he let me borrow this VHS tape. Had Project Grizzly, Steve Martin, stand up and Heat Vision and Jack on like the 6-hour thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's one that I remember pretty distinctly. That was South Hills though, so I wouldn't go there very often, but occasionally. And I mean, that was a movie that I watched it over and over. Then after made my own bootleg copy of it. So that's when it stands out. But you know what else? I bought EC Comics there.
Yep.
They used to have a little magazine rack, and would have some comics there, and so like. Love that I could get a couple of EC Comics at Incredibly Strange Video.
Shouts to Bruce Lentz who ran that joint, and they also had the Warren mags and shit. I saw El Topo there.
Wow.
And I was super into Joe Bob Briggs for a time would do the audio commentary tracks on stuff, and it was a flick called Warlock Moon, in which there is no night shot nor warlocks to be seen in the entire movie, and so he had fun with that. And what was the other? Samurai Cop with Joe Bob Briggs audio
That's
commentary.
Good.
Still have my copies of those as well.
Yeah, I was sad when Incredibly Strange went away, and I mean at this point. Was that 15 years ago?
Yeah, at least a decade. But the dude was super rad, and he, like he had his liquidation sale, and I got so many like Hong Kong movies and shit from him, and it wasn't a sad thing. He could have kept it going. He just had it going for such a long time that he was just like, you know what, I'm just not into it anymore. And then he took the funds he got from that, opened the Hollywood Theater, and so he kept the thing rocking, and. Shit, the stuff that I saw there might have had one of my greatest movie-going experiences, man, with Pink Flamingos, Midnight. You knew who saw Pink Flamingos and who is virginal at witnessing Pink Flamingos just by the guffaws and the shudders and the shrieks, man. Big
That's
screen.
how a midnight movie should be, man.
Big screen in that theater, man. Balcony
awesome.
as well.
I'm trying to think of what all I've seen there, and the stuff that I remember is not that great. It's like Turbo Teen, I think I saw there. I think that was the name of it.
We went. They would get these trauma flicks in, and Poultrygeist was the one where we had this like legendary thing that even like Bruce, the guy who ran all that shit, still talks about whenever I see him, because I went there with 3 people, and they were bullshitting downstairs. I like to get the balcony. So I just went up ahead, and there were 2 people sitting not far from me, like in that front row. Bald dude who had a soul patch, and another old lady. And then they started fucking in front of me, dude. And Bruce came up just to like, I guess, do his like quick checks or what head counts or whatever. And when he went back downstairs, he was like, there's a guy fucking up there. And like my friends knew that I was up. They're like, what? and then they ran up and came to sit down. And the way I describe it was like any kind of cartoon or like a Three Stooges, where they would be like, you would be say 10 feet back that way. And I'm sitting there just watching. And then my homeboy is here, and he's like leaned more this way, like watching. And then the other dude is like leaning as far as you could possibly go. And we're just like checking it out, because it was like they were waiting for it. They were waiting for somebody to show up, because that was like their whole thing, man.
Yeah.
And the first boobs on the screen is when the guy finished. I'm pretty sure from the sound of it. Stuff that one in your pocket.
Wow. Good stuff.
I got nothing else, dude.
Me either.
Shit, let's get the hell out of here. Kayfabers, you gotta like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You gotta hit the bell. That mitigates the kayfabe effect whenever we pop a new show and tell video up, man, and we show a book that you might want. If you are not subscribed, that book might be an extra $50 on eBay.
Yes.
It's happened before.
Wouldn't be the first time.
What else?
You can subscribe to our e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can find Cartoonist Kayfabe merch and t-shirts like this one at the link below this video.
Where can they hit the Octobriana stuff?
Octobriana 1976 Kickstarter has a link to pre-order. That's probably the easiest way to find it. Or ask your local comic shop to order Octobriana 1976.
When do you think it's going to be in shops?
September. My race is to get it into backers' hands before it gets to shops.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
So I am optimistic at this point.
Serialize in Red Room pages on my Patreon, patreon.com/edpiskor. New strips every Tuesday throughout the week. Little behind-the-scenes pieces that may or may not see the light of day in some printed volumes. So if you're an early adopter, jump on that, man. $3 get you the archive. We got to get out of here, Jimmy. Give these as our marching orders, and we're out.
Read more comics.